Hello, everyone. My name is Shelly Lynn Hughes, and I am the founder of Pursuit 365, a community that is now reached into 16 countries. Every week, I interview a new guest and someone who's part of our community. And today, I am interviewing Victoria Terrio. Victoria is the founder and owner of Discover What Works. She's a certified team facilitator, DISC and EQ analyst, and a keynote speaker. Victoria helps raise individual and team performance as well as notably improve client service. She's the co-author of the book, our books, Pursuit 365, and the creator and host of the Discovering You podcast, which explores the role that personality plays in our interactions at work and beyond, and how it affects us as we navigate through life. Welcome, Victoria.
Thanks, Shelly. It's great to be here.
Oh, it's great to see you again. It's been a little while, so
It
I'm really
has, I
excited
know.
to catch
I
up
was
with
trying
you.
to think back. When did this all start? The first book, the white one behind me. Was that during the pandemic?
It
At the
was during
beginning?
the pandemic, yeah,
Yeah.
when we weren't allowed to see anyone. And yeah, so that's like 4 years ago now.
Yeah. 5.
Is that 5?
Well, it started, the pandemic started 5 years ago, but yeah.
Yeah. So pandemic 5 years ago, which that is bizarre. And then how did that go by? Yeah. And then the book, I believe, was 4 years, I
Yeah.
think. Okay. That was like, I think that's how long ago. Isn't it incredible how quickly time flies?
Yes.
It's so bizarre. I'm just
Well,
going to
somebody said it this way to me a week ago. They said, we're talking about the 5 year mark of when it first started, and somebody said, so that means it's been half a decade. And that stopped me in my tracks. Like half a decade since the
wow.
pandemic. Like just when you frame it that way, it's like, oh boy.
It's like, wow, crazy. Anyways, I've got a lot of questions for you because
Okay.
you've got a lot of great insight for our listeners and for myself. So, I want to know about your business. Like, can you share an overview of what your business is? Because it's not a common one. So, share an overview of what your business is, how it got started, and like, what is it all about? How did you get to doing what you're doing?
That's a lot. So stop me if I go on too long. So I'm going to say in a nutshell, but we'll see how much I keep in this nutshell. So, as you hear in the title, like, discover what works. My business name, my podcast is Discovering You. So, DISC, many people are familiar with it. I use it as, I use it for several things, but DISC is basically like a behavioral model, and it's really helpful in terms of understanding yourself. So, what your motivators are, maybe what some of the obstacles could be for you. And also, it helps with self-awareness. So knowing that about yourself, but also knowing, hey, someone has a different style to me. What's that all about? And trying to build a bridge to connect to a different style. That's what it's really good at. And so it can be used in a multitude of ways. For me and my business, there's a few different ways it takes. So DISC is often used for companies when they are recruiting and hiring. So if they're hiring for a specific role, it's helpful to know what the DISC profile that best aligns to that role would be, right? So for someone if the role really requires a lot of detail oriented process, you're going to want somebody who's very high in C, which is compliance. If you need somebody who's going to be more creative and selling and going with it, you're going to want someone high in influence. And so that's part of it, right? Is helping, make sure that somebody is being brought in that is going to align with it. And then often I find and what I think is different with my business, oftentimes that's where people stop. They use it for that and that's the end of it. And then for me, I take it much further because it's so much more than that. So then it's about when the new person joins a company or a team, ensuring that they understand what it means and that they then know what the profiles are of everyone on their team, in their company, to make sure that everyone is communicating effectively and to really reduce the number of misunderstandings. So, a large part of what I do, I'm a certified team facilitator as well. And I can tell you, Shelly, that the number one thing that causes issues on teams, it's not the stuff that people think. It's not what people focus on with, oh, where was their degree, or what do they specialize in, or how hard of a worker are they? number one thing that causes problems on teams is communication or miscommunication. So using Disc as a platform really helps people understand each other. It helps them understand their strengths and making sure that they are aligned to what they are best at.
So with your business, do you go in and help management teams? Like you'll go in and then help with a like a hiring process or like so if I call you up, I'm like, Victoria, I need your help. What happens?
Yeah. So again, depending on what it is. So yes, I
Okay.
can help it in the hiring part of it, bringing somebody in, making sure that again they're aligned to the role that they're being thought of.
Mhm.
Again, as I mentioned, one of the main things is team facilitation. Is so
Okay.
sometimes existing teams, and it can be done twofold. So
Okay.
oftentimes people are doing it for team building, which is great. I love doing it under those circumstances. It's really just like maybe there'll be a new member of the team, or maybe it's just like an activity. And so those are usually half-day sessions where everybody gets a chance to understand each other's personality styles. And then they get to have fun little exercises where we play around with it and look at, what strength does everybody bring, how best to collaborate. I also am brought in at times where there is already a pre-existing issue. So
Okay.
there's sometimes, if there's conflict or something's not going, I will then, be brought in to kind of suss that out and to try to come in and help them find solutions to move forward more harmoniously.
Totally understand. Yes, I get that. So you probably working with all levels of corporate and I guess medium, small to medium and large business, but
Yeah,
all
it's
different.
it's the nice thing is it's really widely applicable, right? So yes, I have worked in a variety of different industries and within different things. So yes, so like senior management teams, but also like I've also done stuff where it was a complete admin and support staff. And for one company, what was great is they had both of those done. So they did their senior team and then they had their admin and support team. And that was very interesting because, of course, you can imagine the types of personalities and profiles for each of those roles are different. And then I had to make sure, okay, we have two very different styles going on here. How do we make sure that we now get on the page to be able to speak the same language, right? Because if you're speaking Italian, I'm speaking French, we're not really gonna we can say it as clearly as we want, but we might miss something. So how can we find a way? So DISC is kind of like the common language that everybody can speak. Okay. My cat is trying to say hello, so just in case anybody sees it,
My cat's sitting here and my dog.
he never misses an opportunity. But but yeah, so that's definitely something. And then in terms of the variety of industries, the nice thing is it can be anything because at the heart of everything really, right, is communication, is how do we make sure that we are on the same page? How do we make sure we're not, misunderstanding one another? And then you can take this as far too as, I also do coaching, right? So like a a kind of basic level of it would be using DISC, right? As sort of like a sketch of what's going on. And then the EQ part comes in. That's sort of a deeper dive into all the motivators and all the different things that go on. But when I was talking about the different industries, one of the things like DISC is very well used, very commonly used with sales. So, one of the sessions that I do or talks that I do that tends to be the most popular one is I'm talking to salespeople, and what I'm doing. Oh, there's your cat. I see them now.
She's here.
Well,
She is.
my cat has remembered to mind his manners. So, but for sales, so often, the nice thing about having a platform like DISC, it's a framework, so you can understand, for instance, people who are high in D. Well, they tend to be very direct, right? They're assertive. They always kind of want to know what's the bottom line, you know, what's the goal here.
Yeah.
They tend to exhibit certain observable behaviors. So one of the things I do in this talk to salespeople is like, can you figure out what your prospects or clients, what is their personality style? And if you can accurately figure that out to some degree, you are going to have much more success connecting to it because now you're going to say, I could be giving them 100 details, but if they're a high D, they don't need 100 details. They need 3 key points and they need to know why those points are going to matter and how they're going to provide a solution for them. When you can master that, you really have such an advantage to connect with other people and to be able to Um, make sales that maybe you guys would have like missed each other, but now that you are able to know, you're not going to lose that.
So with that, you really could go and work with an organization that is inter like inter teams, trying to get them to work well together
Yeah.
with the personalities and knowing like the disc personality profiles of them and how they can work better as a team. But then on the other side of it, going in and working with a sales team, whether it's a salesperson or a sales
Yeah.
team, and teaching them the disc profiles and how they play a role. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And that's
Okay,
that
that
one
makes
tends
sense.
Yeah, that one tends to be really popular because a lot of companies want that, especially for like a sales team, or not even necessarily a devoted sales team, but anybody that's really going to be interacting with clients in a way where they need to kind of get a foothold on what is the best way to communicate, right? So I'll often use the examples like, if we take a one size fits all strategy to sales or to any kind of approach, it's not going to work because we have so many different styles. And what happens is, we tend to look at the world, of course, through our own lens, right? So if you're somebody that's more, you're quiet, you're more introspective, you're more reflective. If you look at somebody who's very sort of dominant and loud and takes charge, you might think they are a bully. You might think that their intention is to overpower you. And you know what? Of course, unfortunately, there are people like that in the world. But mostly when we're seeing high D behavior, that's not the intention. That is not the intention. And so when you understand it, you are now going to smooth over a situation that could have gone off the rails, and now it's not going to go off the rails. So again, that could be a sale you're losing, that could be an important client relationship that you're losing. And by having this is sort of, you think of it like a little toolbox, by having all these little tools, you're going to ensure that that doesn't happen.
That's so good. I love that. And it is, it comes down to like, I don't even know what these disc personality profiles, I don't know. This is why I'm learning, but um I do agree that it would come in handy in both a team group as well as in a sales side of things.
100%. And then even like I said, the first part of it, like just understanding yourself and understanding others. So sometimes that's, another thing I will do is help somebody. So, if you were doing your disc profile, let's say with me, so you would do it, you would get, your results. And like, let's say it would say like, Shelly, you're high in influence followed by dominance. That's me taking a guess at the very little that I know, Shelly. So you can let me know if you do it, if that
So
turns out to be true.
influence and what?
I would say that influence is probably your highest, followed by dominance, which sounds terrible. This
It does
came out in
sound
the
terrible.
1920s. A lot of people now call it, to sound nicer, they call it like directors, right? It's to be with driven. It's a lot of entrepreneurs would have that kind of a profile,
I
right?
like that way better than dominance.
Right. It's a word from 1920, so it's back there, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're dominating people. What it's looking at, Shelley, is the environment. It's like, oh, here's a challenge, here's an obstacle. Am I going to let that take over? No, I am going to dominate that obstacle. So that's kind of more what it's about.
That
Just
is very accurate. That is
yeah.
extremely accurate. And I would agree with the influence side of it.
Yes. And so influence being, of course, wanting to connect, bring people together, being able to, just have a very natural way with people. So high eyes influencers, they tend to do very well in sales because it's natural for them and people are drawn to them. But in terms of like a one-on-one, so like if you did your profile, you'd get it. And then the next part would be, again, I would say to you, hey, here are your strengths. So you're high in this, and this is what this means. And the whole purpose of that is let's make sure that we are aligning you with the best environment, the best situation, to really achieve your goals through those strengths. I don't really believe in like swimming against the current. We have to do that. Of course we do in life. But if we can really figure out our strengths,
Yeah.
let's kind of put ourselves in them. And then equally important, let's understand our challenges. And so when we know what our challenges are too, we come to a situation, we're like, oh, I know what's happening here. And it's really just a matter of, guess what? For every strength in itself could also become a challenge, right? So somebody like high in D, right? So Ds are assertive. That's a strength. They speak up for themselves. They can challenge things. But if we look at what's the flip side of that word, to others it could be aggressive, and then other people are like, oh, I don't like it. So again, one of the dualities that I love, I seem to be very interested, I've noticed, in kind of two opposing things being true at the same time. So the duality of that is our very strengths also provide our challenges. To give you a flip side of that, people are high in C. So details, um, precision, that's great. People will want them to do all kinds of important, accurate work. The flip side of that, though, could be really getting caught in the weeds and not being, being so focused on getting everything right and perfectionistic that sometimes the bigger picture gets mixed. So it's understanding that, it's understanding those tendencies in yourself and to know that, and that will help you relate and connect to others so much more.
Interesting. Okay, so with that, you've talked about EQ or emotional intelligence.
Yeah,
So why is emotional intelligence essential in business?
right. That's a great question. And I can tell you, this is something, especially right now, that I think there's going to be a much bigger focus on. And one of the talks that I'm actually currently working on, so we call it EQ, we can call it EQ, which is sort of emotional quotient. It's also like EI, emotional intelligence. So one of the talks I'm working on is, and I've done this in a different format before, but anyway, it's basically like EI in the age of AI. Okay. So yes,
Okay.
AI is everywhere. It is definitely it's our future,
Mhm.
but what are the limitations of it? And what do we do to really distinguish our humanity from it? Like, how do we keep hold of something that seems like it's out of the box and flying at a really fast rate? And so EI, emotional intelligence, are the things that AI will never be able to do, right? It's like I said, it's our humanity. So emotional intelligence really comes down to, interpersonal skills and intrapersonal. So intra is what do I know about myself? How do I know and manage my own emotions? And inter is how do I interpret and then again connect and manage the emotions of other people. So you're talking about like, leadership. You can have the highest IQ, you can have, all kinds of stuff, but if you don't have what used to be called soft skills, they are now really looked at as essential skills.
What was the with soft skills? Is that what you labeled it?
I did the quote, the air quotes. So people used to call soft skills things like
Oh,
empathy and self-awareness.
yeah.
You know, the things that kind of make us human. And people, you'll know, like I think we've all unfortunately witnessed it, maybe in a corporate environment. You see the person that's like steering the ship, right? The leader, and they're there and they're like barking orders and they're getting stuff done. But then the rest of the passengers on that ship, maybe they don't want to be on board because that person is not inspiring them and in fact could be doing the opposite. And so leaders who don't have self awareness, who don't have empathy. And again, this is very nuanced because you want to have a reasonable amount of it. You don't want to have like an enormous amount. That's a whole other conversation. But leaders who need to have a decent, healthy amount of empathy, they are going to have a much better shot at employee retention, at teamwork, at collaboration. So this is definitely a big focus that people are more and more interested in understanding and utilizing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think more people they want to do well for their boss or the leader if they're kind and they're, like you said, have empathy. But you don't like, yeah, you don't want them like, breaking down all the time either because they have so much empathy they can't do their job. But
Right.
I do agree with that, we all want to do well for people that treat us well and care about us. So, and in the
Exactly.
world today, we can see some leaders don't have a lot of empathy. So things are a little bit odd right now.
Yeah. We can,
Yeah,
yeah, we're getting, I think, some real life examples of of what that looks like and the potential really devastating
disastrous.
impacts that
Yeah.
that can have.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so what are some key strategies for effective team building within an organization with with your expertise? So, do you have some ideas on that?
So you said strategies?
Yeah, for effective team building, like if I'm head of a company or, HR or whatever, do you have some strategies there with this information that you have just shared with us?
Yeah. So um, part of what we do, like if we're doing it in a team, I've talked about sort of how you're structuring the team. So when you're bringing people on, let's say, for instance, you wouldn't want to have a whole team with the same disc profile. And then you may say, oh, why is that? Like, we wouldn't want to have a whole team. Let's say you're, like I said, let's take a guess that you're an ID. You wouldn't want to have a whole team. Why is that? Why that is because you don't want everyone to kind of have groupthink, right? You don't want, so
No.
if we all kind of have very similar ways of approaching things, it doesn't allow us to think outside of the box. So for creativity and collaboration, ideally, we want to have a whole range of profiles. So that's great. That is very good for strategy, for diversification. And then the next part, which is often the part that, I'm doing under, could be fun circumstances, it could be less than fun circumstances. But the next part is, okay, now we have this diverse group. How do we make sure that we're all on the same page? Like, how do we, ensure that we are basically not tripping each other up? So one of the things that's fun that we do is we talk about the key predictor for a team success, which, as I've told you, is very deeply tied to communication. And then not only does everyone know what their disc profile is, what I do is I merge all the profiles, and then there's a team disc profile. So what's cool about that is you could say, so let's say, Shelly, you and I were head of a team that's the Pursuit 365 team. Maybe there was like 10 of us on there. We would then get not only our own profiles, but we would also get, okay, merged together, here's that profile. And then what I can do is I pull a report that's a very strategic analysis of what that team profile represents. So you are very strong in influence, so you're strong at inspiring people and you're great at ideas, but maybe you're lower in C. So maybe you need more people on the team to help with follow through and details and that. So it really allows you to have a strategic analysis of the buildup of the team. And it's not like you say, uh-oh, like we're a bad team. That's not what it is. What then you do is you're like, okay, now we're going to take these learnings and now what are we going to do? So for instance, let's say you need more people on the team. Well, then the next hire on the role is going to be a high C. Or sometimes what I've had, and this is kind of my favorite part when this happens, sometimes after this, I've seen people shift their roles a bit. Not like a dramatic new role, but sometimes when a leader or even the team members realize that somebody has strengths in something that they didn't recognize before, now maybe they say, hey, for this part of the job, maybe Victoria does it. And then maybe we take this part off Victoria's plate and give it to Shelly because Shelly's got, more strength. And I've had feedback and I've had people say, I'm so happy about that because they don't know that particular thing would have come to light. So that is also a really cool part, is making sure every person is aligned in their roles.
That's really cool. I like that. I like
Yeah,
that a lot. Because you don't want everyone all the same. Then you're not gonna grow. I always say hire different, more strong. Like I hire people that have different strengths than mine.
for sure. Because
Yeah,
that's what collaboration is all about. Because otherwise we get tunnel vision and we have blind spots, we miss gaps, there's gaps, right? And so then as much as it can be frustrating at times, like when you do need someone to kind of challenge and oppose you in a healthy, respectful way, which is part of what I do. Are there ways to do that? Yes, there are. And using like DISC as a language is so helpful because it depersonalizes it. So for instance, I could say to you, hey, Shelly, that's great that, you have this idea and you want to do all these things, but so your I is really good at that, but my S, which stands for steadiness, my high S actually needs a little more time. And I think we need to map out, from A to Z, how that's all going to look. And so at the time you might be like, oh, I had this idea. Why is Victoria doing that, right? And I might be like, oh, Shelly, you've got all these fun ideas, but how are we actually going to do it? And so the beauty of it is, again, when we use our profiles, it's not about Victoria and Shelly. It's about, well, your I is great at this and it's looking for this, and my S is great at this. So how do we marry these two and find a solution?
and be productive. Love that.
Yeah.
So if someone is watching today, right, and they were like, "Hey, I want to know my disc profile."
Yep.
Can they just contact you? Is it online?
Yep.
Can
They
like
would,
just an individual, or let's just say they want to bring you into their
yep.
organization, to a big corporate environment. What's if someone wanted to get a hold of you, could they do that with you?
Absolutely. So yeah, they could just reach me on any, my email, my website, discoverwhatworks.org. So what that would look like is you'd reach out to me. I would send you a customized link to do it. It's online, so it's easy. You can do it online. It takes 10, 15 minutes. And then I'm able to run a variety of reports. So depending on what your role is or what the reason, sometimes people want it if they're thinking of shifting careers. So I can run a whole career guide and
Wow.
align roles. So you could say, hey, with this type of profile, these are things that would probably interest you, you'd be good at. If you're somebody in sales and you want to be like, oh, how can I improve? I can run a sales audit, which says, hey, these are your sales strengths. These are your sales challenges. So what do we do to make sure that you try to get yourself into environments where you're in your strength zone? That's a really important thing. And so you get your reports, then you would have like a debrief with me where then I would explain that and say, hey, this is something that you're great at. Here's something maybe that you might want to, watch out for. Same goes with speaking or team building. Somebody just would connect with me and, for teams, everyone on the team would do their profile. Like I said, I would run that big analytical report. And then usually we have like a team building session. So I always try to incorporate like the team building in with it because otherwise you can imagine, right? People are like, what's going on here? Like, am I being scrutinized? Like, oh, am I going to be in trouble? And it's like, no, we're here to understand and learn from each other. And when you do it in that environment, the acceptance of the process is that much higher and the overall impact and results are so much stronger.
What about for teenagers? Like
For
grade
teen
12, grade 11, like would this be something good for them to do, they're grade 11, 10, 11, 12, or do they have to be adults? Because I would imagine it would be great for teenagers.
It's a great question, Shelly, and it's it's really funny. So many of my clients, I've done their entire families. Um,
Yes, like
I
I
do I do
great.
kind of have a personal rule that when I'm doing it professionally, I prefer them to be 18 because I think they need to be an adult just for their
Mhm.
own, for their own sake.
But
Now,
18 plus.
having said that, my daughter, like, because, I've been doing this for about 10 years, and my daughter was always very interested. So she did her first one at like 12, but again, she's my kid. So what is fascinating to me is that hers actually hasn't changed that much. She's now 20. And it's like, that surprised me. I was like, I thought it might change it. Our true disc profiles don't tend to change that much, but at that age, you would think. But again, to answer your question, I often will do it with my clients' kids, like if they're around 17, 18, because what university time, right? Like, what do I take? What would I be good at? And then I also do it a lot out of university, like in that last year when they're like, okay, what do I think? What jobs am I good at? That's when I can run a career guide and do all of that. So yes, it does tend to come through also with parents and their kids. My clients that love it, they're also like, oh, can you do my whole family? I'm like, your family has to be on board for this. I don't know about that.
They do. Well, I was just thinking for like I have an 18-year-old daughter, and I
Yep.
thought it'd be great for her because she doesn't
Yeah,
really know right now.
absolutely. Yeah.
That's a great idea. I think I love that. Okay, we'll be talking about that.
Okay.
And you said she can just do it online.
Yeah, she can do it online. I send her a link. Exactly. And like I usually say to people, if you're a morning person and you know that, do it in the morning. If you're more of a night owl, but no matter what, even though it's only 10, 15 minutes, just set aside some time of the day where you're not going to be distracted by anything. You just sit there. It's 24 questions, that's it. And for any of people who are wondering about the style of it, so it's called ipsative. And what ipsative means is a forced choice between two or more favorable options. So sometimes people say, oh, like these kind of sound all like me, or none of these sound like me. And it's like, you have to go to the one that's most like you or least like you. And that's where you really get a nuanced read. It is meant to be. Sometimes people are like, oh, I don't know which one. And I'm like, guess what? You know how long I've been doing this? When I do my own, I still am like, is it this? Am I this or am I this? So it's quite a fascinating thing to really pull out that. Like there's some really strong science behind it. It's been around for about 100 years now. And DISC is the most widely used assessment model in the world for the workplace. So it's kind of tried and true.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, now I want to do it. I'm going to get my daughter to do it. So,
There
all
you
right.
go.
And I know you have your own podcast called Discovering You. Tell us about your podcast, what inspired you to start it, and what can listeners expect when they listen on in?
Yeah. So of course I've got the pun again on the disc part of it, right? But yeah,
Oh,
like
yes.
discovering
Yes.
you. So it's really all about all things personality, right? So disc is very much about the different, behavioral personality styles. And so every episode I take a look at something that is somehow tied into personality or communication. Again, I always, because DISC is my main platform, I will tie it into that. But I also talk about a lot of fun things, like a lot of people, I don't know if you've ever done the Enneagram, that the younger people really like the Enneagram. That's like 9 types. I've also talk about introversion and extroversion, uh, mindset, different facets of EQ. So like empathy and optimism. So mostly it's me and my producer, who has sort of now become my co-host. We didn't start off that way. I've kind of like tricked her to be more of a co-host, but usually it's us. Like I will be presenting the topic, we'll talk about it, the two of us interact, and then maybe every fourth or fifth episode I have a guest on, if it's something that ties into it. So one of the ones I was really excited about, I had Dr. Robin Stern on. She's from Yale University, and she created or co-created something that we talk about every episode, which is called the Mood Meter. And this is very much emotional intelligence. So it's an app that you can get on your phone. It's called How We Feel. And basically, you just check in every day. You check in and you're like, how am I feeling? And it may seem like an easy question. And you should see the range of emotions that you have the options to choose. And so the whole point behind that is if you can go into your meetings, into your days mindfully, knowing, I might be tired today, I didn't sleep well, or I had an argument with my daughter today, or there was bad traffic, you're going to show up a little differently to that situation. And so even knowing that is going to help make a difference. So it was really exciting to have her on and chat with her about, what led to it, and all of her exciting work. And so, yeah, I never tire. My whole interest in life is human behavior. Like, what makes us tick? Why do we do the things we do? And how do we connect with different personalities than us? So it's about that in a nutshell.
Oh, I love that. That sounds so interesting. That's so like, yeah.
Yeah,
So your co-host, she was your producer before.
she is. So to be fair, she's going to be hearing this and be like, what? No, she is the producer. So she's very technical. That's her strength.
Yeah.
So she does all like the sound quality and the editing and all of that stuff. But we've just become pretty good friends through this process. And so um, I will chat with her. And so, for instance, if we're talking about a certain assessment or quiz, usually I'll say, hey, listeners, here are 5 questions that you would find on this. And then I will get Heather to sort of say how she answered it or how hers turned out, and we'll talk. And we'll talk about how we maybe are similar in something, how we're different. But I just think when you're talking, it's nice to have somebody to bounce the stuff off of, right? So, yeah, she would probably bristle at the term co-host, but I'm getting her there.
That's hilarious. I love that so much. All right. Well, you know what? What I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of the information how people connect with you in down below. So your social media channels, your website, your bio, a nice long bio, so they can get to know you better. And hopefully, well, I'm sure someone's going to connect with you because I just find this all, I knew nothing about it. Just before we came on to the interview, Megan, one of the girls that works with me, and our profiles are completely different, I'm sure. Although she thought they were probably the same, but she said, Shelly, this is going to be such an interesting conversation. You don't know anything about it. And I said, no, I don't know anything about it. So
Right.
yeah, she knew a little bit about it. But yeah, I'm sure people are going to connect with you and want to hire you for your services. I know I find it absolutely fascinating. But yeah,
Yeah,
thank you
people are
for
usually very interested in it. It's a lot of fun. And who doesn't? I find people really want to, it's fun to learn about yourself and what motivates you and maybe what triggers you. And I think people really appreciate having that information.
yeah. And before I move forward with this, before I say goodbye for the day, because I know you've got other things you've got to do, what about relationships, husband and wives or couples, or
Yeah,
this would be
that's
good for
that's
them.
That's so funny that you asked that because um, so I have a lot of clients that are in the real estate sphere. And so if a lot of things about real estate agents, a lot of times you'll find that their families, like, or they're maybe their mother's son or their husband, wife. So for me personally, because I have a lot of clients in that industry, I've had the I've had the experience of doing the profiles. And what is fascinating and probably not surprising after the conversation we've just had. I would say about 90% have opposite disc profiles, right?
Interesting.
And that speaks to the little thing that we were sharing about how you wouldn't want like your team to all have the same profile. And so if you were to have a business partner, the same thing, you wouldn't want to have the same profile. And so I think intuitively we do this with our significant others, right? We're probably drawn to somebody where you're like, oh, I recognize that in them. And that makes me feel either inspired or safe or whatever it is, but it's probably because it's something different than what you have. And again, the key is how do you use that? Can you use that to your advantage? So I always joke about the fact that, again, so my husband and I are a good example, completely different disc profiles. And what I'll always say is, in the past, I, of course, recognized the difference and I would just accept certain things to be like, oh gosh, okay, how annoying. Like he's this way and I'm this way. But when I understood where that's coming from, so I would see the behaviors and I'd be like, oh, but when I would understand it, it really made me be like, okay. And so for instance, for him, he's in sales, he's also a leader, he's very high in D. And I was like, yeah, now I can kind of understand now. So now I'm not having that misunderstanding and vice versa. Then he has an understanding. It's like, oh, okay. So yes, I mean, obviously for me, it's my business. I eat, breathe, sleep, drink, all of that. So for me, it's applicable across all the boards, and that's just another one.
Amazing. Love it. So good. Well, thank you, Victoria, for coming and chatting with me today and hanging out and informing me with what you do and all of our listeners. And I'm excited to do this, and I'm excited to get my daughter to do it as well.
Yeah, awesome. That's
Thank you
great. Thanks,
so much.
Shelly. I enjoyed our chat.
Same, same. All right, my friend. We will be in touch very soon, and thank you again.
Thanks. Awesome. Take care.
You too.
Bye.